All right, so our discussion today is why do people do good things? What's their motivation? Maybe a question you've never thought of before. I think it's an important one, though, so we're going to discuss it. Okay, why do people do good things? So, I was looking this is an important question to me, and like I said, it's not something that everybody talks about, but just to show you that I was on Google, typed in, why do people do good things? And I had to go through 49 listings before I found one that actually discussed the question. There were a lot of listings that said, why do bad things happen to good people? Which is a very common question people have. We're going to get to that question some other time. But um, I finally found a website that talked about this, and I came up with some of my own ideas as well. I've come up with what I think are 6 different motives as to why people would do good things. One of the things you got to be careful about, what does it mean to do something good? You know, you look that up in the dictionary, it means to do something moral or ethical, and then you look that up and do something, upright, and then you look up that, and it goes in a circle back, It's hard to decide what good and moral is when every society has a different set of rules for that. It's amazing how many things, fundamental like this go back to God and Jesus. We'll talk a little bit more about, but for now, just assume that doing something good means to put the needs of others ahead of yourself. Okay, let's just use that as a working definition. It may not be the best one, but just think about it like that. And so I got a little situation for you, and I want to see how you would respond. So someone asked you to donate an evening of your time to help pack bags of food for children around the world that are starving. If you think about whether you will contribute your time to this effort, here are some possible things that you could say, some possible outcomes. Number one, and I got 6 of them here. Just curious, which one do you think you would fall in? I want to discuss each one and the merits and detriments of each one. Number one, you are afraid that if you don't go, that others will call you out for not having a compassionate heart. So you reluctantly agree to go, even though in your heart you just want to stay home. Or maybe you're afraid of being punished by an authority figure if you don't go, although that would be sort of unusual, right? If you were an adult. A lot of kids do operate, with this fear motive. They might be afraid of being punished by their parents if they don't do something good. A child in school might be afraid of getting in trouble with the teacher or the principal if they don't do something good. Although nowadays those things are kind of crumbling, aren't they? I think our school systems, less and less and less are teachers looked at as with respect, and the same thing in the family. I don't think it's good for children to be afraid of their parents, but I do think it's important that they respect them. And I don't see anything wrong with a child respecting his parents so much that he's afraid to do something wrong out of fear of disrespecting his parents. It's not the best possible motive in my mind, but it could be a good starting point, especially for children. And hopefully it leads to some of the other ones that we'll see at the end here. A second possible motive is you might, now this one's a little bit of a stretch. It's hard to fit all these in with a single example, but the motive here isn't hard to imagine when you hear it. So let's say you're running for a political office, and you think this is the kind of thing that might gain the respect of others and further your ambitions. So you do these kinds of things, and it's the old idea of kissing babies, and you want to look good to other people and do quote unquote good things so that other people will, kind of in a quid pro quo kind of way, so like you're doing good, and they say, oh wow, what a great person that is, and in return they vote you into office or give you a position that you want to have. Of all the ones I have listed here, this to me is the most disgusting one, because it's a facade. It's not real. It's not in your heart. Rather than helping other people, you're trying to help yourself. And Jesus had some harsh words about this too. In Matthew 6, verse 2, to the Pharisees, he said, when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, so that they can be honored by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. And instead, he goes on to encourage you, when you're doing quote-unquote good things, to do them in secret. Now, in this particular instance, there's no secret. People can see that you're there helping. But in other situations, like if you were to help a person out, you don't need to go blab it to everybody. A third possible motive. Let's say you're so upset that there are poor and hungry people in the world that you look at this as a way to help eliminate world hunger. Okay? I'm going to call this a social justice motive. Now, this one is a little bit weird because it's both very good, but it could be very bad. Let me try to explain. For starters, this is what Jesus kind of did, right, for almost his entire ministry. It's helping the poor, the sick, the hungry. In fact, he says in Matthew 25, for I was hungry, talking about the judgment day, for I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. So he's strongly encouraging us to help those who are in need. Forefront of his ministry. On the other hand, here's the possible pitfall for it. If you look at eliminating world hunger or whatever the problem is as a way to elevate yourself or others that you've joined with in this regard, and when you're done, you're going to slam your fist down and say, my gosh, look how good we are that we did all this, then you run the possibility of going back to the political motive, okay? You want to be careful you don't turn this into your own personal God, that you've done all these good things, aren't we wonderful, and then try to displace God from the picture. There's an interesting passage in the Gospels where a woman pours this really expensive oil over Jesus' head and washes his feet with it. And Judas and some of the other people there were saying, what are you doing? This is a waste of money. We could have used this to help feed the hungry and care for the poor. And Jesus' answer is interesting. The guy who spent his whole life doing that said, there will always be the poor, but you won't always have me. So I think it's really important when we go out and do these quote unquote good things for other people that we make sure Jesus comes first. And we make sure that we recognize that we're doing this because we love and respect him, and we're in a way trying to imitate him, which actually is motive number 4. So let's say the person who asks you to do this is one that you respect and trust and have chosen to obey and imitate. And I call this the obedience/imitation motive. And this might be what a child, as he starts to grow, maybe it starts out as fear. And then it actually, as they start to grow older, they start to imitate their parents if they respect them in different ways. And, it's actually a very natural thing. I have a lot of mentors in my life that once you trust and respect them, you just start imitating. You just start doing the things that they do. It's not like they're giving you a personal challenge and they want you to match it. It's just that you see it and you like it and you want to do it. And, the more I read about Jesus' life, the more I want to be like him and do the kinds of things that he did. And the easier it gets over time, too, the more that you engage in those kinds of activities. And there's all kinds of passages in the Bible that tell us to imitate Jesus. Ephesians 5, 1 and 2. There was an interesting thing, a wristband that people had many, many years ago. I lose track of time. It would say WWJD, what would Jesus do? And there were people that criticized that, but I just think it was a good reminder, to try to imitate him in everything that we do. A fifth motive would be, here, consider this possibility. Maybe there's someone is receiving this invitation to come and help, And maybe they're the kind of person that in their life, they have been hungry and didn't know where the next meal was going to come from. And you know that because you experienced that, you know what it's like. And so now you want to help other people. And because you're grateful for the people that helped you, and you're grateful that God has helped you in your life, now you want to give back out of gratitude. And so I call it the gratitude motive. You've experienced God's goodness. You're so thankful for it that you now want to give back. And I think this is an incredible way to look at God and to look at the world and to look at people around you. There's all kinds of passages in the Bible that direct us to do this. One of my favorite that when I was growing up, we would always say after a meal was, "Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good." And that was from the Psalms, and there's all kinds of passages in the New Testament that instruct us to be grateful. And I just think it's almost a natural thing. If somebody does a wonderful thing for you, or don't you just feel like you want to pay them back? Not that we could ever pay God back, but don't you just feel like you want to give back? I think it's a somewhat natural thing. The last one, um, I want you to imagine a person that gets this invitation to help, and they've done this thing their whole life so many different times that they don't even think about it. They just instinctually respond. They hear the call for help, and they go, "Okay, I'm in." It's just part of who they are. They've been transformed over time, and they've kind of got, how you look like your parents because you have your parents' DNA? It's kind of like they have God's DNA, and so they don't physically look like him, but if you watch their actions, you would see God in almost everything that they do. Um, sometimes people call this born again. So it's like a person has had a rough life and had some rough experiences and maybe listened to the wrong crowd and to the wrong people. And then they meet someone who introduces them to Jesus, and their life is completely transformed. And they become a new person. And they've given up their old life, and now they have this new life, and it becomes a natural thing for them to live out this new life by doing good things for other people. I and like I said, sometimes it happens like overnight. Not for me. It's been a gradual process for me my whole life. But yeah, I think if you're not sure like what your motive would be, what the best motive would be, I would gravitate towards the ones on the bottom of this list. The obedience imitation motive, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The gratitude motive, I want to do this because of what God has done for me. And then the last one, the instinctual motive, you can't control that. It's just going to happen to you over time as you get closer and closer to God. I hope you've enjoyed this. Love you all. See you next week. By the way, a little footnote to our discussion on why do people do good things. I forgot to leave out what some people might think is the most important one, which is to earn your way to heaven. But since that's not how salvation occurs, I left that out. If you feel that that's how it happens, let's have a discussion in the comment section. Thanks again. Bye.